Hello, Fractal Friends, and everyone out there in the world of Facebook and Instagram. Um, I made a video recently where I talked about what the problem with the world is, and I also wrote an essay about it. You can find those in the links over on the side there. And you know, as soon as I talked about what the problem is, I realized, well, people probably want to hear about the solution. Well, there's a bit of a challenge here. There's not necessarily a solution, but there's a lot of ways we can do our problems better. And so that's what I want to talk about a bit. And so, welcome to this conversation about how we can be in our challenges with a little bit better. But first, let's have a reality check. Stuff's not going very well right now, folks. I know you maybe have noticed, and there's a battle over the soul of our country that's kind of happening, at least in the United States. But I recognize that this is happening in a lot of places around the world. And there's this sense that this has like cosmic consequences. I hear both sides on the right and the left saying that this is the most important election ever. And there's a real fear that whatever happens is going to scare people or is going to cause a real problem one way or the other. And, you know, the truth is it's going to get harder before it gets easier, probably. And, you know, what I kind of want to point out is that, you know what, we're the team here. Like, all of us are together, and we're the ones who are going to decide how we do this future together. It is not really so important about who is the leader. Now, obviously, having a leader that, you know, is stoking division and so forth is not helpful. But the truth is that, you know, it seems like, you know, Biden's probably going to win this election, but that's actually not going to solve the problem because Trump isn't the problem. Democrats aren't the problem. The riots aren't the problem. The uprisings aren't the problem. White supremacy isn't the problem. The problem is that we don't trust each other. We have gotten divided in such a way that we've stopped believing that we can do this together. And that's actually the only way that we're going to be able to do this. You see, the shenanigans that can happen can be really problematic, but there's also a really amazing opportunity that's happening here. And this opportunity is that we're kind of at a consensus, like a kind of a global consensus across political parties, across any demographic you can imagine, really around the world. Stuff's not working very well. People really can understand that. And I think people are starting to believe that there must be a better way for us to be doing this. There must be a better way for us to be co-creating the world together. And the truth is there is. And there are actually lots of better ways for us to be doing this. And, you know, what I talked about in the last thing is that we've kind of gotten into this idea that, you know, this is some story about good guys versus bad guys. And of course, everyone thinks that they're on the good guy team, and everyone else thinks that the other side is the bad guys. But here's the truth. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. None of us are. If we really are honest with ourselves, we all recognize, at least I can recognize, that I am a flawed individual. I've made mistakes. I've hurt people. And even then, I know, with all of my flaws, I know that there's a way for me to still do good, for me to grow, for me to make amends, for me to redeem myself. And that's not only true of myself, but I believe that's true of you. And I believe that that's true of everyone. And it's really important for us to start remembering that we can actually all recognize that none of us are perfect and that everyone has room for growth. And so the first thing I want to talk about is like as a solution to the problem that we're facing. And I often say that this is the solution to actually all the problems, is self-forgiveness. There's something about recognizing the mistakes we've made and recognizing that we can forgive ourselves. Because what that does is it gives us the capacity to look at others, see the mistakes that they're making, and find space for forgiveness. And this is going to be key for us. There's a lot of messed up things that we've done as individuals and as a country that we've done collectively in our past. And we have to really recognize there needs to be a path for redemption and compassion and forgiveness for us to be able to move through this. And so as we're there and we're getting out there and we're feeling angry about whatever's happening, learning to figure out how we can forgive ourselves, which will give us space to then forgive others. There's a great paradox out there, which is if you really want someone to change, you have to first accept them exactly as they are. And that sounds hard sometimes, especially when we're dealing with like really intense things and that everyone's really scared. But the truth is that we can accept people as they are, because what that does is when we accept ourselves and when we accept each other, that creates space for growth and change. There's a real important here is that we can actually start learning how to not dehumanize each other, but instead reach out to each other's humanity and really speak out for the best in each other. And that is going to be so important because right now people are really fed up and really frustrated. There's a really interesting thing that I saw recently, which says that there's a dehumanization scale, and people are asking Democrats and Republicans how much they dehumanize each other. And, people are giving each other an 8 on the scale on average on both sides. But the perception is that people think, when you ask them if they think they're being dehumanized, people are getting scored a lot lower. People think that we don't think each other are human anymore. Now, that's a really intense thing to think about, especially because dehumanization is like the fundamental precursor to violence. And so our first step, and there will be many more in this little series that I'm going to do here, is going to be able to say, like, I see your humanity. I see that you're here and that we're on the team together. And I recognize that we're going to have to do this together. And that's my dream, is that we can start at least recognizing the humanity in one another. So one of the things that I've started to do to work on this, I have a podcast. It's called Fractal Friends. And I started reaching out to people who were conservative, living in the Bay Area. I don't get exposed to a lot of conservative voices. And so I started reaching out, and I have some really amazing guests coming up. An evangelical pastor, minister, a Green Beret, and like a fiscal conservative who's like also really worried about the environment. And these kind of ways that we can reach out across our differences and really listen to each other are really important. I mentioned earlier that there's not really a solution here. And what I mean by that is this idea that difference is not a problem and sameness is not a solution. The question is how we live with this. How do we interact with it? How can we be in diversity? Diversity of beliefs, diversity of race, diversity of backgrounds, diversity of language and expressions. How can we live in diversity of political beliefs and still be in relationship with each other? And a lot of that comes down to listening and communication. And so in future parts of this series, I'm going to get into communication and how we can communicate better across our differences. I'm going to be talking about polarization and how do we cut through that polarization. I also want to say that I've been working really hard right now to put out a bunch of podcast episodes. I've been doing one a week heading up into the election, and I'll be doing that through November. And if you reach out and find out to some of these messages that people I've been getting in touch with, there's a lot of like seriously facing reality, as well as some amazing solutions and perspectives. And we go to everything from music to dialogue to science and spirituality, collective consciousness, compassion, the principles of do no harm. There's some really clever people out there, and we have a lot of really good ideas about how we can make a better world and how we can do this together. And so as things get hard in this next bit of time, just remember that we are all in this together. We are the team, and we're all humans, and we all make mistakes, and that's okay. That's what we do. Then we're doing actually a pretty darn good job. The systems are holding together mostly, and and people care a lot, and that's how we know that. Um, that's why everyone is so up in arms. Is because they care. They care about their families. They care about their future. They care about their grandchildren. I care about my families. I care about my future. I care about my grandchildren. And so, step one, let's forgive ourselves and let's forgive each other. More to come. Thank you for listening to this and hope you have a wonderful day.